Welcome back to Scripture Horror. Tonight we're traveling to Oregon, a place known for mist-covered forests and cold, rainy towns. But the things we discovered there are anything but peaceful. These are 6 real stories from people who believed they were living normal lives, until they uncovered something that changed everything. What if the family business you trusted is hiding a horrifying secret? What if the food you've been serving isn't what you think it is? And what force keeps calling people toward the cliffs on violent storm-filled nights? These people found out the truth the hard way, and some of them are still running. If you're new to Scripture Horror, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because we share real horror stories every single day. Before we begin, I need to warn you, these stories go dark. Very dark. If you're ready, let's see what's waiting in the shadows of Oregon. My name is Maria Gonzalez, and I've been running my family's farm stand in Oregon's Willamette Valley for years. 3 generations worked this land before I ever learned to walk. My grandmother Elena started the stand back in the early days with nothing more than a folding table and a few tomatoes she'd grown herself. I grew up watching her move through the fields like she was part of the earth itself. She taught me everything: how to listen to the soil, how to predict the rain by the smell of the air, and which seeds could change a harvest. I thought I knew everything there was to know about farming. I thought there was nothing left for the land to teach me. But what happened in October showed me that some roots grow deeper than we can ever see, and some secrets should never be dug up at all. The divorce papers were barely dry when I inherited the farm outright. My ex-husband David never understood the value of dirt under your fingernails or why anyone would choose to earn a living from the ground instead of sitting in an office. He always said I'd be happier working for someone else, somewhere else, anywhere except our family land. But when he ran off with his secretary, leaving me with our daughter Sophia and a handful of bills, there was no choice left. The farm was all we had. Sophia was only 8 years old, and I was determined to hold on to everything Elena had built. Our house, our memories, our entire future depended on what we could sell from that tiny white stand on Highway W, just outside McMinnville. Every morning I opened the shutters at sunrise and arranged the produce in neat rows: corn, tomatoes, squash, beans, all grown on the acres behind our home. Sophia helped after school, counting change with her gap-toothed smile and greeting customers by name. The regulars had been coming for years. Mrs. Patterson always bought corn every Tuesday. Bob Miller always wanted our biggest tomatoes. The young couple from Portland drove down every weekend just for our green beans. October was always the best month. Harvest season brought crowds, and the farm felt alive again. I needed a miracle that year. I just didn't know it was already buried under the dirt. The weather had been strange all summer. Too hot in July, then freezing cold in August. Crops grew, but slower than usual. Yields were smaller, stalks weaker. I worried every night that we wouldn't make it through winter. That's when I remembered the box. After Elena died years earlier, I cleaned out her bedroom and found a wooden seed box hidden under her bed. I had forgotten about it until that moment. Inside the box were envelopes of seeds wrapped in yellowed paper, each one labeled in her careful handwriting. Elena's special tomatoes, golden corn, magic beans. Some were marked with numbers, others with odd messages like, "Good luck year," and "Very important." I laughed when I found them years ago. Grandma Elena always had her superstitions. She believed certain seeds were passed down through blood, not just soil. She believed the land needed to be fed and cared for like a living thing. I never believed any of that. But I was desperate, so I did what I never thought I would. I planted those old seeds behind the main garden in early September. The soil seemed to drink them down eagerly. The seeds looked healthy, round, and heavy in my palm. Within days, the shoots pushed through the dirt. Within a week, they were twice as tall as my regular crops. By the end of the month, the produce from that small plot didn't just grow, it flourished. The tomatoes were enormous, smooth and flawless, glowing in the sunlight like something painted. The corn reached 12 feet, the kernels shining with a gold so bright it looked almost unreal. The green beans were crisp and bright, and snapped so loudly it echoed across the yard. Customers noticed too. Suddenly everyone wanted to know where I found these miraculous vegetables. Sales doubled, then tripled. Mrs. Patterson held the tomatoes like precious jewels. Bob Miller bought pounds of produce at a time. The Portland couple drove down 3 times a week. They all had the same hungry look in their eyes, the same desperation in their voices. "Those tomatoes are incredible. I've never tasted anything like them. Do you have more?" I should have been happy. I should have enjoyed it. But something about the customers changed. Their eyes burned brighter. Their skin looked healthier. They came back day after day, buying more than they ever had. Like the vegetables were feeding more than just their bodies. Something was wrong, but I told myself it was just my imagination. I ignored the uneasy feeling that crawled up my spine every time someone stared too long at the produce. Then Sophia cut herself. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. She was helping me harvest the special corn when she slipped and scraped her palm on a dried stalk. Blood dripped onto the ears of corn in her basket. Just a small injury. But the moment her blood touched the kernels, I saw it. The corn pulsed. Not like a breeze moving the leaves, like a heartbeat. The kernels swelled and shifted as if something beneath the skin was breathing. Thin red veins spread under the golden husk like the roots of a living creature. I blinked, thinking it was just shadows, but Sophia saw it too. "Mom," she whispered. The corn moved. I carried the basket back to the house and touched one of the kernels. It felt warm, not warm from the sun. Warm like flesh, warm like blood. That night after Sophia went to bed, I took a flashlight and went back out to the special garden. The plants weren't just growing. They were alive. The vines of the tomatoes had tiny red veins like capillaries. The corn stalks moved in slow waves as though something inside was pushing through. The green beans hung from their vines like pale, swollen fingers. I ran back to the house and locked the door. The next morning, Mrs. Patterson arrived early, like she always did. But that day she looked different. Healthier. Too healthy. Her cheeks were rosier, her skin tighter. Her gray hair thicker. When she smiled, her teeth looked sharper. She asked for more produce in a polite voice, but her eyes were hungry. When she bit into one of the tomatoes in the parking lot, juice dripped down her chin like blood. For a second, she looked like a different person entirely, and she wasn't alone. Every customer who ate from that special plot began to change. Younger, stronger, hungrier. They stared at the vegetables like they were the only food left in the world. That night, I went back into my grandmother's room looking for answers. In the bottom drawer of her old desk, under stacks of tablecloths and folded linens, I found a journal bound in cracked leather. Her handwriting filled every page. I read entries that stretched back decades. The hungry ones came again today. Mrs. Bezers. "Chen wants more carrots. They get younger every year. I planted a new batch." Over and over she wrote about the special seeds, about feeding the land, about helping the crops grow. The same phrase kept appearing. Proper nutrition, proper feeding. And then I saw the line that changed everything. "Never let Maria see the compost pile. She is too soft-hearted." When I reached the last page, my blood ran cold. She had written a message for me. "Maria, if you are reading this, you have planted the seeds. The family tradition continues. The land is hungry. The community is hungry. Feed them both. Go to the shed. Everything you need is there." That shed had always been locked. I never questioned it. That night, I went to it with the flashlight shaking in my hands. The smell hit me before I even opened the door. Sweet and rotten at the same time. The smell of something dead. Inside were bags labeled compost, but this wasn't dirt. It was darker. Heavier. Mixed in with it were pieces of bone, teeth, fragments of things that should not have been there. And in jars, carefully labeled, were names and dates. Mrs. Bates, Thompson, Mike Williams, Jenny from Portland. I dropped the flashlight. I understood suddenly why the vegetables grew so fast, why the customers changed, why they craved more. For decades, Elena had been feeding her plants with human remains, turning her produce into something that made people hungry for more than vegetables. They were becoming cannibals. And I had been selling it to them without knowing. When I got home, Sophia was in the kitchen eating raw green beans one by one. She told me they tasted better after burying our neighbor's missing cat in the backyard. She said the plants talked to her. She said they told her how to make them grow even stronger. I grabbed the gasoline from the garage and ran to the special garden. The plants reached for me as I approached, their vines twitching like muscles. Sophia screamed at me from the window, her voice wild and desperate. I poured gasoline across every row and lit a match. The flames caught instantly. I swear I heard the plants scream as they burned. The smell wasn't just burning crops. It was burning flesh. The shed and garden turned to ash. I told the fire department it was an accident. We moved to Portland. I opened a restaurant named Elena's Kitchen. Just one envelope of seeds survived. I kept it hidden, because Sophia still gets hungry in ways she shouldn't. She watches the pets in our neighborhood, eyes shining in a way that terrifies me. I grow our special produce on the rooftop in hidden planters. The customers find us quietly. They never ask what they are really eating. They never want to know. They just want more. Sophia has learned the recipes just like I did. She works beside me, cooking for customers who would devour human flesh if it was served to them directly. I pretend I'm protecting her. I tell myself it's safer this way. But the truth is hard to escape. I'm not protecting her from our family's curse. I am teaching her to live inside it. The farm stand may be gone, but Elena's legacy continues. And some nights when the wind blows across the roof, I swear I hear my grandmother's voice whispering from the shadows. We take care of our community, Mija. And they take care of us. And in the darkness, I know there is no escaping the truth. The land is hungry. The customers are hungry. And we are the ones who feed them. My name is David Kim, and I've owned Portland's Moonrise coffee roaster for years. Everything I know about coffee started beside my father, working with him for years until he passed. My dad came to Portland from Seoul with nothing but a strong back and a heart full of ambition. He got a job washing dishes in the same building my shop stands in now, back when it was still Romano's Italian restaurant. He worked there for years, saving every dollar until the day he could help me buy this place and turn it into what we dreamed of together, a real coffee shop, one that brought people together. I roast small batches by hand, I source beans from farms all over the world, and I work hours a day just to keep the lights on. This shop is my father's legacy. It's my future. It's everything I have. And the truth is, I'm drowning in debt. If the shop fails, so does everything else in my life. I lose my home, my father's dream, everything we built. But I keep going because that's what he taught me. Work hard, brew good coffee, and the people will return. But last January changed everything I believed about life, death, and the thin line between memory and madness. I should have walked away the moment I drank that first cup. But when you're desperate to save everything you love, you make choices that follow you into the dark. The morning of January that began like any other. Portland's winter rain hammered against the windows while I warmed up the old Probat roaster my father and I restored years ago. German engineering from the S, still working like it was brand new, filling the shop with heat and roasted sweetness. I was expecting a shipment from my supplier, Marcus Chen of Global Bean Network. He ran the place out of a warehouse near the airport and had been in the business for years. The small roasters like me depended on guys like him to survive against massive chains. I checked the moisture levels of yesterday's roasts, updated the chalkboard, and brewed our signature blend. The shop sits in an old brick building in southeast Portland. Small tables filled a room, with my roasting equipment behind a glass wall so customers can watch. Right at a.m., the delivery truck rolled up. Tony, Marcus's driver, hauled in 3 burlap sacks. New Ethiopian variety, he told me, handing me the paperwork. Marcus says this one's different, grown in volcanic soil. I signed for the shipment. For LB more than I usually paid, but premium Ethiopian always cost more, and I needed something special to stand out. Starbucks had opened 2 blocks away last month. I needed a miracle. The beans looked flawless. Medium-sized, consistent color, fresh, grassy smell. I pulled a sample and roasted it even as Tony left. The farm name on the paper read, Eternal Rest Cooperative, from the Sidamo region. I hadn't heard of them, but new farms pop up all the time. Around noon, I roasted a test batch. Everything behaved normally. First crack at minutes, second at A. I pulled them at minutes for a medium roast. Perfect for Ethiopian flavors. But when the beans cooled, the air didn't smell right. Instead of caramel and nutty sweetness, it smelled metallic and damp, like old coins or wet stone. I blamed it on the volcanic soil and brewed a cup anyway. The coffee looked normal. Amber, clear, aromatic. The first sip tasted like any high-quality Ethiopian bright acidity, floral notes. Then something else took over. Suddenly, I was 5 years old, standing in a kitchen I had never seen before. A woman with silver hair made pancakes, humming a song I somehow recognized. I could smell bacon frying even though I still held the cup. I felt the morning sun on my small shoulders. Then I snapped back to my shop, shaking so hard I dropped my cup. It shattered across the concrete. My heart crashed in my chest. I told myself it was stress. Too much work, too little sleep. I forced myself to keep working, but I couldn't shake the feeling that memory didn't belong to me. It belonged to someone named Harold who loved his wife's pancakes more than anything. In the next days, I roasted the rest. Customers couldn't get enough of it. Mrs. Patterson, who always bought decaf, told me it was the best coffee she'd ever had. "It reminds me of my grandmother's house," she whispered with tears in her eyes. James, my regular, bought 3 bags and said it made him feel like he remembered things he never lived. They weren't just drinking coffee, they were drinking someone's memory. I should have noticed the hunger in their eyes as they sipped. I should have listened. But the money was too good. I sold more in 1 week than I had in a month. For the first time in months, I made rent. That's when I started experiencing memories every time I cupped a batch. I lived as Margaret, a school teacher who died regretting never having children. I became Thomas, a construction worker who fell to his death. I lived as Susan, who drowned in the Columbia River and whose last thought was the unfinished novel she never got to write. The emotions were real: fear, joy, loneliness, regret. I tried different beans, but customers kept asking for Ethiopian. They were addicted. Every day more people came. Some customers stayed for hours, drinking it slowly, their expressions blank and distant like they were somewhere else entirely. Then I called Marcus. "Eternal Rest Cooperative," he said. "Family-owned, unique growing methods." "Organic amendments. What kind?" I asked. "Just organic material," he said. "David, you're my #1 buyer for this stuff. People are calling from everywhere. Just keep doing whatever you're doing." That wasn't enough. I stayed up late researching the farm. Nothing. No website. No records. Eternal Rest didn't exist. I searched Ethiopian agricultural databases. Finally, I found a land deed from... The farm wasn't owned by a coffee company. It belonged to Memorial Gardens, import-export. They ran crematoriums. Organic amendments. Eternal Rest. Human ashes. The beans were grown in cremated remains. My blood froze. I went to Marcus the next morning. His warehouse smelled like coffee and diesel. I confronted him. He took me into the back office and shut the door. "I've been in this business for years," he said. "Prices keep dropping. Small importers can't survive. Memorial Gardens came to me when I was months behind on my lease. They processed too many remains for legal storage." He looked ashamed. "They needed a disposal method." "So you helped them get rid of human ashes on farms?" "Not dump," he said. "Mix. They combine remains with volcanic ash and ship it to partner farms. The farms think it's fertilizer. It's just input. Coffee comes out normal. It's not normal. People are reliving memories." He stared at me like I was insane. What if memories are stored in the chemical carbon of our bones? What if the dead never really leave? He didn't have an answer. I showed him the lab report I commissioned. The coffee contained trace mineral compounds only found in cremated bone, and something else scientists couldn't identify. Marcus sank into his chair. Jesus Christ, what have we done? But my mind had already run past fear. My customers weren't buying coffee anymore. They were buying time. Mrs. Barris's. Patterson said she could taste her grandmother's house. James could finally feel his father's presence. One customer, Carol, came daily because her son died in Iraq years ago. She could feel his thoughts. How could I take that away? That night, I brewed another cup. I knew what was about to happen, and let it happen. I became a man dying in a hospital bed. Tubes in his arms, the smell of disinfectant. Flowers everywhere. A young man sat beside him holding his hand. "I'm proud of you, son. The coffee shop will be perfect." My eyes flew open. It was my father. My dad had been cremated at Memorial Gardens. His ashes were supposed to be in an urn at home. But part of him was in me. The grief hit me like I was drowning. Through the coffee, I could feel his memories, his pride when he taught me to roast, his exhaustion after double shifts, the fear that I'd be alone with debt. I could feel his love. I could also feel his guilt. He had signed papers during his last days, giving Memorial Gardens permission to use his remains for research because he wanted to leave me with less debt. He didn't understand what it meant, but that coffee was my father. His love, his memory, his legacy. I couldn't give it up. So I made a choice. Instead of exposing Memorial Gardens, I partnered with them. I turned Moonrise Coffee into something different. Customers could request blends from specific cremations. There were records. There were catalogs. Mrs. Patterson could order her grandmother. James could experience his father. Carol could relive her son's final months. A cup. A bag. A bag. People paid. They flew in from across the country. The shop became a pilgrimage site for grief. I hired a grief counselor. I added private rooms. I built a system to guide people into the memories. And every morning, I started my day with my father, his love, his memories, his voice telling me I'd made the right choice. Business exploded. I paid off the debt. I bought the building. I opened 2 more locations. The news ran a feature calling my shop a revolution in grief therapy, but late at night when the shop was quiet, I wondered if I was losing myself. After years of drinking the dead, my own memories started to blur. Was this my thought, or Harold's? My fear, or Thomas's? After everything, I don't know where David Kim ends and the souls of Memorial Gardens begin. But I do know one thing. I have given hundreds of people a chance to say goodbye. To hear the final thoughts of those they lost. To feel love that survives death. My father always dreamed this place would bring people together. He just didn't know how literal that would become. If you've lost someone, if you need one more moment, one more memory, one more goodbye, come to Moonrise Coffee. Ask for the special blend. But remember this, once you taste the dead, you never go back to being fully alive. My name is Jennifer Walsh, and I've spent years working in hotel housekeeping. I started straight out of high school, cleaning budget motel rooms near Portland, changing sheets, scrubbing bathrooms, learning how to deal with every kind of disaster that guests leave behind. I worked my way up to big chain hotels, supervising entire floors, memorizing laundry systems, perfecting room turnover schedules, handling messes you wouldn't believe. I've cleaned after food poisoning outbreaks, walked into cheating spouses mid-argument, and found everything from drugs stuffed into air vents to dead pets hidden under blankets. After enough years in this job, you think nothing can shock you. You learn there's no stain you can't scrub out, no disaster you can't clean away. But what happened at Crater Lake Lodge in September changed everything I thought I understood about this work. It changed what I believed about guests, about death, and about what kinds of things check into a hotel. Crater Lake Lodge sits on the edge of one of the deepest lakes in America, a lake formed in the ruins of an ancient volcano. The building is a historic National Park hotel from the early 1900s, with thick stone walls and exposed beams that groan in the wind. During summer, we ran a full staff of 20 housekeepers, but in September, almost everyone was gone. Kids were back in school and the crowds disappeared. The lodge stayed open, but barely. Only 5 rooms were occupied, and we had 3 staff in total. There was Rosa, the day supervisor, Bill, the maintenance guy who doubled as everything from plumber to security, and me. I took the job 2 years earlier because it came with employee housing, a tiny cabin behind the main building. After my husband Mike died of cancer, I was drowning in medical bills. We had insurance, but that didn't cover experimental treatments, private equipment, or the ambulance rides. I was working 3 jobs at once, housekeeping at the lodge, diner shifts in Klamath Falls, and nighttime office cleaning. I had 2 sons, Tyler and Marcus, who needed not only a mom but someone to pay the rent. The lodge was special to Mike and me. It was where we honeymooned, room 312 with that perfect lake view. Mike believed the lake was spiritual. He used to sit on the balcony for hours just staring at the blue water. When he died, something about cleaning rooms in that same lodge felt like keeping him close, maybe pathetic. Grief makes you hold on to strange things. Every morning, Rosa handed me the checkout list. Usually 2 or 3 rooms. The routine never changed. Stock the cart. Linens. Towels. Cleaners. Vacuum. Room turnover took about 40 minutes. Strip beds, scrub bathroom, disinfect touches, restock amenities, vacuum carpets. The lodge used heavy metal keys instead of key cards. Guests loved them for nostalgia, even though they were a pain to use. That Tuesday, room 306 was on my list. The Hendersons from Sacramento. They'd been there a week. I saw them a few times, early 60s, polite, chatty at breakfast. The husband even tipped me when I brought extra towels. Checkout was at 11, and it was almost noon. I knocked like always. Housekeeping. No answer. My master key opened the door. Something was wrong the second I stepped inside. Not messy. Not damaged. Wrong in the opposite way. The beds were made perfectly, hospital corners tighter than when I cleaned them. The towels were folded precisely, spaced exactly evenly on the rack. There were no toiletries, no suitcases, no clothes, not one personal item in sight. But there were also no signs they had packed. Most guests leave behind something. A phone charger. Half-empty water bottles. A receipt. A stray sock. This room looked staged. Like it belonged in a hotel catalog. The first strange thing was in the bathroom. A pile of thick, wet fabric stuffed in the corner behind the toilet. It was grayish-green, cold, and slimy when I lifted it with gloves. The smell hit me immediately. Cold lake water. Not any lake. Crater Lake. That strong, mineral scent. The fabric looked disturbingly human-shaped, like a flexible mold someone had slipped out of. I told myself the Hendersons brought scuba gear or wetsuits. Weird, but I've seen stranger things. I bagged it for lost and found and finished the room, but the entire time I felt like I was being watched. Old hotels always have ghost stories, and this one was ancient. Still, I checked the balcony door twice, feeling unsettled. That afternoon, Rosa showed me the updated reservation book. The Hendersons had extended their stay. They were still checked into room 306. But I just cleaned it, I told her. It was empty. Rosa called the front desk. She frowned as she listened. They didn't check out, she said. They said they went down to hike the lake trail. They'll be back before dinner. I couldn't explain it. Maybe they packed the whole room for cleaning. Wealthy guests sometimes had strange habits. I brushed it off. But that evening, I saw them in the dining room. Same table, same clothes. Except their faces looked too smooth. Artificial, like something was stretched over them. Mr. Henderson smiled like he always had, but something in his eyes was wrong. They were deep black and completely flat. Their movements were slow and careful, like they had to think about every step. I told myself I was tired. It had been a long week. But then more things happened. Rooms on my list were marked as checked out but looked untouched, sanitized beyond human capability, and perfectly staged. I kept finding more of that green-gray fabric, sometimes in closet, sometimes under beds, always damp, always cold, always smelling like the lake. My master key began jamming. The old locks would stick like something was holding them from the other side, and whenever I finally got them open, the rooms were immaculate again. I started watching the guests more closely. The Hendersons weren't the only ones. The couple in room 311 moved with the same careful steps, skin tinted gray under the lobby lights, voices hollow like they echoed from underground. Mr. Ground. Chen in room 2004 had been there 6 weeks. I had cleaned his room dozens of times, but never once saw him eat. Just pushing food around his plate. Rosa dismissed it. Off-season guests are always weird, but I knew better. Something had taken over the lodge. The night everything happened, I was doing late turns because the washer was broken. It was nearly 10 p.m. And I had 2 rooms left. Room 31 was supposed to be empty. The Patels checked out that afternoon. I unlocked the door and called out. No answer. But I heard wet sliding sounds from the bathroom, like something heavy dragged across tile. I should have gone to find Bill, but I stepped toward the bathroom anyway. The sound stopped. I opened the door. Mrs. Patel stood in front of the mirror. She was peeling off her skin. Not cutting. Peeling it away like clothing. Underneath wasn't a body, but something made of water and sediment, swirling like river mud. A shape pretending to be human. She turned. Her voice sounded like water against rocks. "You weren't supposed to see this." I ran. I reached the lobby before I heard heavy, wet footsteps behind me. The desk was empty. Bill was probably in the basement. Then I heard my name from everywhere at once. Jennifer. The voices of all the guests together, hollow and waterlogged. They came from the elevators, from the staircase, from the dining room. The Hendersons. The Patels. Mr. Chen. All wearing human skin but moving like puppets. "You have been so helpful," Mr. Henderson said. "So thorough." "The fabric?" I whispered. "Our former selves, Mrs. Ez." Patel answered. "We shed them after consumption." The truth hit me. I'd been cleaning up after the dead. "The guests," I said. "Gone," Mr. Chen answered. "We took their bodies, their memories, their reservations, preparing to return to the world. Then something worse stepped out of the shadows. My husband, Mike. He looked alive, younger, healthy, same smile, same voice, same flannel shirt I buried him in. "Hey, Jen," he said, like coming home from work. "The boys are happy to see me." I couldn't breathe. "We found his form in the deepest part of the lake," the creature said. "Preserved. Waiting." He stepped closer. "I love you. I love the boys. You're not him. I have his memories, his love. I can give you forever." They offered me a choice. Join them willingly and stay as myself in a new form. Or refuse and lose everything. "A friend of theirs is visiting," Mr. Prest. Chen said. "Someone they trust." And then Mike said the words that broke me. "The boys think it's a miracle." We walked to my cabin. Tyler and Marcus were awake, watching the door. They saw Mike, and their faces changed. Shock. Hope. Fear. He spoke to them gently. And for 1 second I almost broke. Almost believed this was fate. But I asked to speak to Mike privately. We walked back toward the lodge, the creatures following. He held my hand the way he used to when I was upset. "Choose," he whispered. I ran. I grabbed the basement key and the flashlight. I knew the building better than they did. I found the electrical panels, the propane, the storage room with piles of human skins, hundreds. I threw the breakers, opened a gas line. They followed. "Don't be foolish," Mike warned. I climbed up the coal chute into the kitchen, grabbed a match from the stove, and dropped it. The explosion shook the entire lodge. Glass shattered. Flames tore through the building. The creatures stumbled out, their false skins melting into dark water, sliding toward the lake. Mike was last. "You've doomed your children," he said before melting away. I ran back to the cabin expecting the worst. But the boys were asleep together on the couch. The official reports blamed an electrical fire. The lodge was never rebuilt. I took the boys back to Portland and tried to live again. We never talked about that night. How could I tell them their father came back as something wearing his face? Sometimes I wonder if I made the wrong choice. Maybe having him, even as something else, would have made them happier. But then I remember the storage rooms full of empty skins, the families who never saw their loved ones again. The lake is still there, beautiful. Blue. Tourists still go. Some never return, and I will never step near Crater Lake again. My name is Carlos Rodriguez, and I've been running food trucks for years. I started with nothing more than a battered taco cart parked outside construction sites, selling carnitas and burritos to workers for a few dollars apiece. Those early days were brutal. 14-hour shifts, cold mornings, and long nights where I barely made enough to cover rent. But I kept going. Because I wasn't just selling food, I was selling my grandmother's recipes. I watched her cook when I was a child in Guadalajara, back when we still had a home and a quiet life. I remembered the way she used her hands like a sculptor, measuring chiles by instinct, stirring mole with a rhythm like a heartbeat, and always reminding me that food is how we survive in a country that tries to erase you. Eventually, the cart became a truck, then another. Then finally, my dream, Abuela's Kitchen, the most popular food truck in the Southeast Portland pod. People lined up every day, office workers, families, tourists, hipsters, people who had never tasted real Mexican food in their lives. They said my green salsa made them cry. They said my carnitas were like nothing they'd ever had. They didn't know the truth. Those meals weren't just recipes. They were my identity, my grandmother's stories, my family's survival from one country to another. Every dollar earned was another piece of the future I was building for my daughter, Maria. I fed thousands of people. I helped immigrant friends open their own trucks. I hired workers who were undocumented and terrified of being noticed by the wrong officials. And by last July, I had a steady catering deal with fancy restaurants that wanted authentic street food experiences. It made me proud that rich chefs and wealthy customers wanted my grandmother's dishes. And that was when everything changed. It started with the new inspector. The others I'd known for years, older guys with beer guts and clipboards, the same health questions every time. But this one wasn't like them. His name was Davidson. He was young, sharp, polished, too confident. His Spanish was perfect. He wore clean-pressed shirts instead of a standard uniform, and he carried a sleek black briefcase instead of a clipboard. "Mr. Rodriguez," he said during the July inspection, flipping through my permits. "I hear you're expanding into catering." "Yes, 3 restaurants now. They're paying premium prices for my grandmother's recipes." He smiled like he already knew every detail of my business. "I might have some additional opportunities for you. Very exclusive clientele, high-end events." I should have felt lucky. I didn't question it. More money meant more security for Maria's future. I worked every day from sunrise to midnight, and Maria helped after school, smiling while she took orders from the customers. The truck was everything we had. So when Davidson returned that night with a cooler of premium beef, I didn't suspect anything. "Grass-fed, organic," he said, lifting the lid. "Restaurants pay high prices for this quality, and I can get it wholesale, only for catering events." It looked expensive. Perfect marbling, deep red color, beautifully cut. I'd never seen anything like it. So I cooked with it. And that night, the carnitas came out richer, deeper in flavor. The customers raved. One restaurant ordered double for their next event. But something wasn't right. The texture was wrong. The smell underneath the seasoning was familiar but disturbing, like something from a memory I'd buried deep from the worst days in Guadalajara. My family once hid in a basement for 3 days during cartel violence. We had no food. A neighbor brought meat from somewhere. My mother cooked it without asking questions. But even as a child, I knew something was wrong. That taste burned into my mind forever. It tasted of fear. It tasted of human beings. I pushed the thought away. Trauma does strange things to the mind. This was premium American beef. Davidson had documents. He had access. But then, one by one, food truck owners started disappearing. Miguel, the owner of the pupusa truck, failed an inspection for improper refrigeration. That was impossible. Miguel's truck had the cleanest setup in the pod. He argued, but he couldn't afford the fines. He closed. Nobody has seen him since. Carmen from the tamales cart vanished after another surprise inspection. Her truck sat empty for weeks. People said she went back to Mexico suddenly. But Carmen had 3 kids in Portland schools. She would never abandon them. Jose from the elote stand disappeared next. Davidson had done all 3 inspections. That's when I stopped ignoring the truth. He never inspected during the day like the others. He came at night, alone, always carrying that briefcase. And when someone was struggling financially, he offered special opportunities. The pattern was too perfect to be coincidence. So I started watching him. In early September, I followed him after an inspection. He didn't drive to a city health office. He drove to a warehouse in southeast Portland. Through a loading dock window, I saw workers in white coats cutting meat on metal tables with surgical precision, not a butcher shop. Not a restaurant supply. It was too clean, too organized. They cut the meat like scientists dissecting bodies. The next week, Davidson brought me more premium beef. I took it, but I didn't use it. I took it home and examined it. I sliced a small piece and cooked it under bright kitchen lights. The smell made me gag. I had smelled that before. That memory of the basement, of starvation, of meat we were never meant to eat. It wasn't beef. It was human. I vomited until my stomach was empty. I washed my hands until my skin bled. I had served this meat to customers, to families, to children. I had contaminated my grandmother's sacred recipes with human flesh. Davidson wasn't just corrupt. He was part of an operation. A machine that turned immigrant food truck owners, people with no legal protection, into premium meat for elite restaurants. I thought about going to the police. But what do they check first when someone like me walks in? Immigration papers. Work permits. The story was insane. Who would believe it? And those missing truck owners. Undocumented. Alone. Voiceless. I couldn't stay silent. So I decided to get proof they couldn't ignore. The next time Davidson visited the warehouse, I followed him again. I took photos. License plates. Workers moving boxes. Coolers unloaded. Then someone knocked on my car window. It was one of the regular inspectors I'd known for years. His face was pale. "Carlos, you need to leave. They know you're watching. You know what's happening?" He looked terrified. "Some of us found out. But we can't stop it. Too many people are involved. The best we can do is warn others." "What about the missing truck owners?" "They're gone," he whispered. "Processed. Served to restaurants where one meal costs more than you earn in a month. And now they're targeting your daughter." Time stopped. "What?" "They know she works with you. Young. Undocumented. Nobody will look too hard if she disappears." I raced back to the food truck pod. Maria was cleaning up after the dinner rush. She smiled when she saw me. She had no idea she was in danger. Davidson's car was already there. I grabbed Maria, shoved her inside the truck, and told her to lock the doors and call police if anything happened. Then I walked toward Davidson. He was setting up his equipment. He looked up. "Carlos, perfect timing. I was about to inspect your truck." He asked about my daughter. He expected her to be there. His voice was too calm, too friendly. I told him she wasn't coming. His smile slipped. He knew. I pulled out my grandmother's knife, sharp, heavy, the same one she used to protect her family during the Revolution. "I know what that meat really is. I know what you're doing. And you're not touching my daughter." He laughed. "You think you understand? Judges, politicians, investors, they pay for the exclusivity, the taboo. You are nothing but a food truck owner. Nobody will believe you." Then he drew a gun. I threw the knife. It hit his shoulder. He fired wild shots that shattered my truck's window. I took his gun and stood over him. He was still laughing. "You think this ends with me? There are more. There are always more." I took his phone. Photos. Emails. Contacts. Addresses. Restaurants. Suppliers. Names. Enough proof to expose every part of the operation. I called the inspector who warned me. Within an hour, Maria and I were on the road, racing toward the California border. We couldn't trust the police. We couldn't trust immigration. The operation reached too far. But before we left, I uploaded everything: videos, photos, proof to the cloud. We've been moving ever since. New cities. New identities. New food trucks. I warn immigrant business owners when inspectors ask strange questions. When truck owners go missing, I help their families disappear before they become the next victims. 6 months later, the Portland operation was raided. Investigators confirmed at least victims. 3 restaurants closed. A few low-level people arrested. But the customers, the wealthy ones, they were never charged. Maria starts college next month. Not in Portland like we planned, but somewhere safe where nobody asks questions. She wants to study criminal justice now. I still cook my grandmother's recipes. But they mean something new. Every meal is a reminder that we deserve to exist with pride and dignity. That most people are good. That evil hides behind power and wealth. My name is Mike Torres, and I've been a seasonal park ranger for 6 years, bouncing between national parks across the western United States. I've handled bear encounters, rescued hikers who lost their way, and talked people down from cliff edges when they were seconds away from stepping into the void. I thought I'd seen every kind of danger that nature could throw at a person. But what happened at Crater Lake in June changed every belief I ever had about this world and this job. Some places aren't just beautiful. Some places remember. The job at Crater Lake came at the perfect time. My girlfriend Maria was months pregnant and we were drowning in medical costs. Seasonal work never came with benefits, and everything we paid for the pregnancy came straight out of our pockets. The posting for Crater Lake said there was a chance for a permanent position if I performed well. Permanent meant insurance, full pay, a future for our kid that didn't involve ramen dinners and overdue bills. I applied the same day, interviewed the next week, and got the job in late May. The park superintendent, Davidson, seemed especially interested in my background. My grandmother was full Klamath, born near the reservation. Davidson said it would be helpful for cultural interpretation programs, something the park was trying to promote. I didn't tell him that I barely knew anything about the tribe. My grandmother died when I was young, and my dad never talked about that side of our family. But Davidson didn't need to know that. Crater Lake sits inside the remains of a massive volcano. Mount Mazama exploded thousands of years ago, and over time the crater filled with water. At almost 2,000 feet deep, it's the deepest lake in the United States. The water is impossibly blue, the kind of blue that feels unreal when you look at it long enough. Almost 1 million people visit the park every year, most of them in the summer when the snow melts and the roads open. My job sounded simple enough. Patrol backcountry trails, check on campsite permits, run night shifts along the rim where people weren't allowed to camp or climb. Visitors always tried to sneak down to the lake, but it was illegal to touch the water except at one designated spot. The lake was sacred to the Klamath people. It still is. I started on June 1st. The first 2 weeks were normal. I hiked Lightning Spring Trail, checked permits, reminded tourists not to feed the squirrels or get too close to wildlife. The park was getting busier with tourists, photographers trying to get sunrise shots, families looking for the best view, older couples exploring in their RVs. I stayed in a small ranger cabin near the North Rim, about 3 miles from the visitor center. When I worked nights, I patrolled from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., checking in every 2 hours with dispatch on a heavy old Motorola radio. The park had weather sensors and seismic monitors all throughout the area since, technically, we were still standing on the remains of a volcano. My grandmother used to tell me stories about Crater Lake when I was a kid. She called it Giwas. She said that 2 gods fought here, Skell, who lived in the sky, and Lao, who lived under the mountain. She said they threw fire and molten rock at each other until Skell defeated Lao and trapped him under the lake forever. She always looked serious when she told that story. "The mountain remembers, Mikey," she'd say. "The lake remembers." Not everything stays buried. I used to think those were just fairy tales. The strange thing started on June 13th. It was a clear night. No moon, just stars hanging above the lake. I was walking Watchman Overlook and stopped to check in. When I looked down at the water, the surface looked wrong lower than usual. I've been watching the lake every day for 2 weeks. I knew its edges, the lines where water met rock. The level had dropped at least 10 feet. I radioed dispatch. "Dispatch, this is Torres at Watchman Overlook. I'm seeing unusual water levels. Lake looks low." "Static," then Sarah replied. "Copy that. How low are we talking?" 10 feet at least. "It's a big lake, Torres. Doesn't change overnight. Probably shadows." But I knew it wasn't shadows. Crater Lake has no rivers flowing in or out. Its level stays consistent year-round. There was no possible way for it to drop that fast. I stayed there watching, and over the next hour the water kept falling. Slowly, but undeniably falling. The volcanic rock where water had been just hours before was exposed. Then I noticed shapes on the newly revealed shoreline. Stone walls, ruins, and bones. Big bones. At 2:11 a.m., my radio crackled again. Not Sarah this time. Just static. But underneath the static I heard something else. Low chanting. Rhythmic. Ancient. I switched channels. The sound was on every channel. Then the radio died completely. I pulled out my phone. No service. There was usually at least one bar up near the rim, but now there was nothing. As I walked back toward the cabin, the temperature dropped so suddenly I felt it in my lungs. My breath came out in white clouds. It had been 60 degrees an hour earlier. Now it felt just above freezing. I checked my thermometer, 58 degrees when I started the patrol. Now it felt closer to 35. The lake was still draining. I could hear it now, a deep sucking sound like someone unplugged the world's largest bathtub. I ran the rest of the way to the cabin and pulled up the weather station data on my laptop. The system glitched and lagged before finally loading. The seismic monitors were spiking, but they weren't reading volcanic activity or earthquakes. The pattern was too regular, too deliberate. It looked like something breathing. I called the main office on the landline. Davidson answered immediately, annoyed. "Torres, the lake doesn't drain. The monitors glitch sometimes. End your shift and get sleep. I'm looking at seismic data. Something is. We'll have tech check it tomorrow. Good night." He hung up. I didn't sleep. I watched the monitors all night. The rhythmic pulses continued until sunrise. At 5:18 a.m., just as the sun rose over the rim, I went back outside. The lake was back to normal. The impossible blue surface shimmered like glass. All the exposed land, the ruins, the bones, gone. Nothing happened for a few days, but everything felt wrong. The wildlife disappeared. Ground squirrels vanished. Birds stopped singing. I saw a black bear sprinting away from the lake, running so fast it barely touched the ground. On June 17th, 2 hikers didn't return from Cleetwood Cove. When we found their camera, the photos showed the lake, except the water was blood red. When we reached the shoreline with the search team, the water was blue again. We never found the hikers. Davidson changed too. He became hostile, especially with me. Every time I reported the lake changing, or the animals fleeing, or the seismic data, he shut me down. Animals migrate. Do your job, Torres. But he was scared. I saw it in his eyes. The lake turned red every night between midnight and 1 a.m., not light red arterial red. I took pictures, but they always came out as streaks and static. Around that time every night, my radio picked up chanting again. Not just noise anymore, words. Klamath words. I only knew a few more than children's stories, but I recognized one name repeated over and over, Lau. June 21st, the summer solstice. The busiest day in the park, the longest day of the year. The visitor numbers were insane, thousands of people. Davidson called every ranger on duty. All of us spent the morning directing traffic, giving safety talks, dealing with cranky tourists. It was bright and warm, perfect weather. It didn't feel like anything was wrong. Then around noon, the ground started shaking. Not like a normal earthquake, not the sharp jolt or rolling wave. This felt like movement under the earth, like something enormous was shifting beneath us. Then the lake started dropping again. Fast. I watched it fall in minutes. Tourists screamed, took videos, climbed onto rails to get a better look. The water level plummeted more than 50 feet, exposing the ruins I had seen before, ancient structures and massive bones scattered everywhere. Davidson was yelling into the radio, trying to get people to evacuate. But these people were tourists. They didn't run, they filmed. That's when I saw it rising from the center of the lake. At first it was just bubbles breaking the surface, swirling water. Then the shape emerged, massive, monstrous, impossible. Black volcanic rock fused with molten lava. A body that didn't follow the rules of shape or geometry. It moved like it was alive. It had heads, or maybe one head that existed in multiple places at once. I knew its name without anyone telling me. Lau. People panicked. Running for cars, screaming, dropping cameras. Davidson was shouting orders nobody was listening to. The entity rose higher, water cascading off its body. It watched us. Its presence swept across the rim. Then the voice came, not through ears, but directly into the mind. Everyone heard it. People clutched their heads, screaming, crying. This place is sacred. This place is mine. It spoke in Klamath, yet somehow every word made sense. You violate what is sacred. You take without respect. You treat the holy as a playground. Then it focused on me. Child of the people. My knees buckled under the presence. Lao saw into me. It knew my lineage, knew what little heritage I denied. Images flooded my mind, my grandmother's stories, rituals, words I didn't know I remembered. You will choose. Point out those who deserve punishment. Choose those who will die. Refuse, and I will take them all. Around me, tourists prayed and screamed. Some still tried to film. Even in the face of something ancient and divine, they couldn't stop treating it like entertainment. I whispered, I can't. Lau's presence pressed down harder. Then I heard my grandmother's voice, not memory. Actual voice. The ceremony, Mikey. The one I taught you. You remember. I did. Pieces of an old ritual. A guardian's right. The cost was steep. The guardian could never leave. They gave their life to protect the sacred. It meant giving up Maria, my baby. The future I wanted. But thousands of people would live. I started singing. The words came instinctively. Lau recoiled. You would do this? Give up everything? Yes. Lau considered, then slowly sank back into the lake. The waters roared as they filled the crater. The ruins disappeared. The bones vanished. The surface turned blue again. So be it. The bargain is made. The ground stopped shaking. People fled. Davidson found me sitting on the rim. He looked decades older. What was that? Something old, I said. Something that was here first. You're not leaving, are you? No. He nodded. I'll process your permanent position. Full benefits. Family housing. That was years ago. Maria didn't understand at first. I told her I got the permanent job. I couldn't leave the park. She brought our daughter Sophia for the first year, but it was too hard. She moved back to Portland. I see Sophia every few weeks. It's not the life I wanted, but it's the one I chose. I patrol every night. The lake is calm. Tourists come and go, respectful or not. When people try to violate the sacred place, Lau wakes. The water shifts. I intervene. I keep the balance. I'm not just a ranger anymore. I'm a guardian. And when the stars are bright and the lake is still, I feel Lau down there, ancient, waiting. We understand each other now. This place is alive. This place remembers, and I will make sure it stays protected forever. My name is Maria Santos, and for 6 years I've worked the overnight shift at the Midnight Munchies food cart in downtown Portland. I'm 26 now, finishing my nursing degree while my parents grind double shifts to pay what my part-time checks never could. They came from the Philippines with nothing but debt and hope, sacrificing everything so I could have a future. This job was the only one that fit around my classes. Mrs. Chen hired me when 3 other places rejected me. I needed the work. I needed the money. I needed the degree. But what I witnessed in those October nights destroyed everything my family built. Working late in Portland's party district teaches you things about people you'll never learn anywhere else. You see everyone at their breaking point. College kids too drunk to walk straight. Nurses grabbing dinner after 12-hour shifts. Homeless men counting quarters for a hot meal. Bartenders cleaning vomit off their shoes. Every night feels like hundreds of stories crossing paths under streetlight and rain. You start to remember patterns. You learn faces. You memorize their orders. That's how I noticed the first sign that something was wrong. Midnight Munchies sat in a pod of 5 carts on Southwest 3rd Avenue, wedged between bars and a Mac station. I worked alone from midnight until 5 a.m. Mrs. Dem Chen installed cameras and reinforced locks after someone tried robbing the Korean BBQ cart next door. One camera pointed straight at my service window. Another faced the small prep area behind me. October in Portland means constant rain and cold air thick with fryer oil and steam. By 2020, the pandemic had emptied half the city, but the late-night drunks kept us alive. I wore 2 masks. One for COVID. One because grease gets into your hair, your clothes, your life. And that's when the regular first showed up. He was a white guy. Mid-30s maybe. Dark jacket. Jeans. Same order every night at 2:07 a.m. On the dot. Chicken teriyaki bowl. Extra sauce. No vegetables. Large Coke. Exact change. Never spoke more than 3 words. Never made eye contact. Just took his food and walked toward the Mac station. I assumed he worked night security or at a hospital. Portland is full of people who live their lives in the hours most people sleep. But then he started changing. The first night I'd brushed it off. He looked taller. The next, his eyes were a different color, brown instead of blue. Then his face looked different. The shape of his nose. The angle of his jaw. I convinced myself I was exhausted. I blamed the lights. I blamed the rain. I blamed my lack of sleep. Then one night in early October, he ordered his food, walked away, and came back 10 minutes later. Same jacket, same face. Same exact order. When I told him he'd already been there, he stared at me like the words didn't make sense, then turned and wandered off without his food. I felt something tighten in my chest, a cold little voice whispering that this wasn't normal. I started keeping a notebook under the register. Every customer. Every order. Every detail. The regular kept returning night after night, but he was never the same twice. His voice changed. His body changed. His hands changed, sometimes rough and cracked, sometimes smooth like a child's. His height changed. His gait changed. But the order was always identical. Exact change. Same route toward the Mac station. Then other customers began showing the same pattern. A woman in a red coat. A young man with a beanie. A tired-looking bartender. They came every night. They ordered the same meals, but their eyes shifted. Their hair color changed. Their heights changed. Their voices changed. Their reflections changed. I wasn't sleeping much, class in the mornings, job at night. I told myself it was stress. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself anything except the truth. Until I checked the cameras. Mrs. Chen gave me remote access to the footage, so I watched every night for 2 weeks. That same man in the dark jacket appeared 7 times in one night, 7 versions of him. Different faces, different bodies, different heights. Same jacket. Same order, same route. The woman in the red coat appeared 5 times. The guy in the beanie showed up 6 times. That's when I started checking the news. Portland always has missing person reports, but in October, the numbers jumped fast. A hospital worker named David Chen vanished walking home from his shift. His photo showed him in the exact same jacket. A bartender named Jennifer Mills disappeared closing her bar. She wore a red coat. A student named Marcus Wedd went missing. His roommate said he always ate at the food carts before heading home. I had served all of them, or something that looked like them. One night, the thing that looked like David Chen showed up again. His jacket matched his missing persons photo. But his face was wrong. His eyes were too far apart. His skin was too gray under the street lights. His voice sounded like he was mimicking speech instead of using it. Chicken teriyaki bowl, extra sauce. No vegetables. I made his food with shaking hands. He took it and walked toward the station. I followed him with my eyes to the glass shelter. That's when I saw it. He had no reflection. For the first time, something broke in me. They weren't people. Not anymore. They were things wearing people-like clothes. And they came to my food cart because those people had. The next week, more of them showed up. Dozens. Different faces. Different shakes. But always the same orders. Always the same dead voices. Always the same behavior. I thought about reporting it. I thought about telling Mrs. Chen. But I knew what would happen. I'd get fired. I'd drop out. My parents would lose all the money they spent helping me. I'd be the crazy girl who thought monsters were ordering teriyaki bowls at 2 a.m. So I kept working. I kept cooking for them. I kept pretending everything was normal. Then one night, one of them finally spoke differently. The one wearing David Chen's face leaned close to the window and said, "We know you can see us." My blood froze. You write about us in your notebook. You watch the cameras. You check the news. You know what we are. I couldn't speak. We're not here to hurt you, Maria. We take shapes. We feed. We remember. That's all. My name sounded wrong in its mouth. Like it tasted the sound. Like it owned it. We can help you. I asked what it wanted. Someone like you. Someone who knows and keeps the secret. Let us feed. Let us keep our shapes. And we'll replace you. You'll graduate. You'll have a future. You'll make your parents proud. It slid exact change across the counter. Think about it. I didn't sleep the next day. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Their offer buzzed through my head like a wasp. A copy of me working the job while I lived my life. No more exhaustion. No more failing exams. No more shame. But it wouldn't be me. It would be something wearing me, eating my memories, living my life. And what happened to the original people? Were they dead? Trapped? Buried somewhere inside a body that wasn't theirs? I saw the missing people in my mind. I saw their families. I saw the news report. The next night, I went to work with a plan. Mrs. Chen kept a gas can for the backup generator. I waited until the streets were empty, served the last few humans, then locked up. I poured gas through the cart, over the equipment, walls, floors. I soaked every inch of it. I took her lighter from the drawer. The thing in David Chen's face appeared at the window. "Maria, what are you doing?" "I'm not letting you replace me." I dropped the lighter. The fire exploded upward. Flames raced across the walls and burst from the window. The thing stumbled backward, and for a moment, its body broke. 2 long limbs. 2 many joints. A shape wrong for this world. Then it ran. I ran too. The fire department came. Police questioned me. Mrs. Chen pressed charges, then dropped them when I said I'd had a breakdown. My school suspended me. I dropped out. I lost everything. My parents cried. My friends disappeared. No one believed me. But the missing person reports stopped. For 3 weeks. Then they started again. Different neighborhoods. Different carts. Different patterns. I didn't stop them. I just scattered them. Now I live on the streets. Shelters. Doorways. Back alleys. I watch the late-night restaurants. I watch the Mac station. I follow the things when they move. I warn people when I can. Some listen. Most don't. My parents think I lost my mind. But I know the truth. They're still here. They're hunting in the crowds. Wearing faces. Ordering meals. Following memories because it's all they have left of being human. I destroyed the one place that gathered them. And now they're everywhere. Maybe it's my fault. Maybe I should have taken the deal. But at least I'm still me. And I'm still fighting them. Even if that's all I have left.